Hi, I'm Amy Hightower. I work at Korea, and before I worked at Korea, I worked for a helicopter company. And today I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to human factors and how it can inform your writing. June 20th, 1990, a window blew out of the cockpit of a British Airways flight 5390, sucking the captain out of the cockpit window, jamming his knees up under the flight controls. He survived, everybody on the plane survived, they landed safely. But the question is, how did that happen? Why did that happen? And this is something that aviation asks itself a lot. Why do these sorts of things happen? And the answer is human factors. Human factors is the study of how people work, of how humans interact with systems, tools, technology, organizations, how organizational culture affects the way that you work and how you work safely. And it's broken down into a bunch of different subtopics, all of which you should be thinking about when you're writing, particularly if you're writing for things which can cause damage. This can be anything from causing injury to causing somebody to brick a system, or in the case of my company, to accidentally lock 10,000 students out of their school devices. It's never happened, but it could. The factors that you want to consider are the information. This is actually the #1 factor that aviation companies consider when they're assessing what's going on with human factors. What information is available? What information was available at the time? How was it written? Was it understandable? Was it complete? Was it current? Was it too complex? Did you provide them with 500 pages of information, or did you present it in a simplified format? Because the more complex and the greater the volume of information, the more likely for mistakes, the more likely for misunderstanding. And if you're not using standardized language and standardized formatting, it starts to throw people off. They have to start thinking, back to Teresa's earlier talk. You don't want them to have to think and make decisions when safety is on the line or when you can damage people's working environment, and damage their productivity or their assets. Equipment is the other thing for you, particularly for you developers out there. When we talk about equipment, this is the tooling that you're using or that your customer is using. Is it easy to use? Is it easy to understand? Does it work as expected? Do people have to develop workarounds for it? With your documentation, do people have to develop workarounds for your documentation? Do they have to have multiple windows open in order to get the information that they want? Do they need to have a video running? Do they need to have this? Do they need to have that? Are the images clear? The design and configuration of the system that they're working with itself, again, for the developers out there, is the system itself easy to use? The components fit together logically? Can you use them for their intended purpose? Is the job or the task that the person is doing clear? Is it clearly articulated to them, either in written form or verbally in handover? And this is an area where recommendations will often come in for documentation for incidents. Where is this documented? Can you document this so that it can be more clearly understood, so that there is something to follow that is replicable and safe to use? Task knowledge and skill. Do people have adequate understanding of the task? If they don't have adequate understanding of the task, they don't have the skill or the knowledge themselves, where do they go to get it? Is that, again, clear? Is there information? Is there documentation? Is there training, to make up that gap? Is there business continuity? If I get knocked out, if the senior engineer gets knocked out, can things continue? What's the individual's working environment like? Are they working in difficult conditions? Is it very hot? Is it very noisy? Is it very stressful? Does the organization and the culture contribute towards working safely, or is there a lot of commercial pressure to get things done and get things out the door? Is there good leadership? Are there good communication? Are there processes for good communication? A whole bunch of these things go into looking at incidents and accidents and hoping to prevent accidents in the future. Where this comes in for us as documentarians, aside from the demands to do documentation to prevent some of these things or respond to them, don't make me think is an incredible principle to operate by. You don't want to make people think. You don't want them to make decisions which could lead to error, and you need to think very carefully about how you're structuring instructions. But it also means that you as the writer need to guard against complacency. Repetition And when people don't have to think, they get accustomed to doing things, they start skipping steps, accidents happen. So there's a tension there. It's not always enough to say, make it so simple they don't ever have to think. Sometimes you need them to think and be conscious of what they're doing, and that's your responsibility as the writer to prompt that appropriately. Context is king. Thinking about your writer is something that you always do as an author, but you really need to think about the environment in which they're working, not just what they're personally like, but where do they work, how will they be using your information, what is the context of that use. And find out what people actually do. If you're out there documenting things, it's all nice to think about the perfect real-world scenario, but you actually need to get out and talk to people, see what they do, get on the shop floor, get in the maintenance hangar, get in the development room. How do they actually work? They'll tell you how they work, and how they work, it'll be two different things. If it's critical, it's a checklist. No bones about it.
Ding, ding, that's time.
Thank you.